I'm going to just talk a bit about my experience, and I'll go through looking at my various experiences at Ashanti. I'm taking Ashanti because that gave us one of the first case studies of looking at how to harness investor confidence and to retain investors in the country. In the Ashanti case, this was in the 1970s. You realize that the main industry was at the verge of collapse. We only had the state enterprises and then one company, which was Ashanti Goldfields Corporation at that time. It was company at that time. And I think somewhere in 1972, the government annexed 55% of the shares of Ashanti Gold at that time and made it more of a state-owned company. The state, as usual, and in the military regime, were unable to run the affairs of the economy properly. And so what happened was we were unable to support the mining industry effectively. There's a case, and I stand to be corrected, that Sale Gold Mines, Takwa needed, jumbo ties? They needed 4, but because the persons in Accra didn't know what a jumbo tie was, decided to give them 3. That was how much they could offer from the controlled foreign exchange, because at that time it was a restricted foreign exchange era. So they had to wait for another month to go and apply to get an additional tie before they could work. So all these things were causing problems for the mine. And luckily, in 1985, Ashanti then took the first loan through its other partner, Lonro, of about $55 million with IFC assistant. And that came out to try and mechanize the whole, or retool the Amponsah underground mine. That was followed again in 1987 with a bigger project, which was the Ashanti Mine Expansion Project. This time, for an African country at that time, a private company as well, to get $185 million, syndicated by IFC and then a couple of Western banks. It was quite helpful for us. And with all these things, you see the role of what the Loro partner did. And because as a result of this, it became necessary that there was policy liberalization in the mining sector. Otherwise, the lenders were not prepared really to work with us. A lender to really work with you, there were various things in the ERP era. Well, the gold price was good at that time. Gold price was around $650 per ounce. I think almost 50% of what we have today. But that was very high. I mean, we had come from 350 to 650, so that was good at that time. And it was going up. And the gold market was a price taker, so there was no need to go and do any extra marketing to get gold, or to get the gold bought. It was always available to be bought. So investors felt it necessary to come into a commodity that was available for us. And what happened was that there was a buyer and there was a seller. Ghana needed capital development. The investors needed a return on asset or on investment. So what happened really at the time was that investors were attracted to the prospects that we had, and we had a willing government who was in need. In that period, what really happened was that having modernized all these equipment and gotten this much money for the Ashanti Mine Expansion Project, in the mine expansion project, that was when I basically adored myself, because I happened to be the youngest engineer of that project. The project was basically run by all experts, and we had just about 2 Ghanaian engineers on the project, junior engineers, and one of the things that we were doing really was to train us and expose us, and that was very helpful. In all, we bought about 21 jumbos. We bought about, I think, 48 scoop trams. We bought 15 scissor lifts. So it was a massive capital injection into the mining industry at that time. And you know that with all these things happening, the investment gap that the government didn't have was supplied by the multinational, which was Loro. Here, multinational basically will be defined as a company that has more offices or enterprises outside of one country, maybe about 2 or 3 other countries. And Loro had so many, at that time, was represented all over the universe. So, having done this, we realized that the role of Loro did help develop the mining industry in Ghana. It gave us a new approach to our relationship with the outside world. And in giving us that new approach, other investors were prepared to come on board, like the Goldfields that we have now and the Newmonts, and more exploration companies came into the country. In that period, what government basically did was to basically go back and look at our laws. So the role of government became necessary. It was incumbent on government to reform its laws, otherwise there will be capital flight. Like earlier speakers said, people liked Africa because the plane full of experts were coming to Africa because there was money in Africa. But they just wanted to have a safe African country to work in. And Ghana presented that safety. Despite the Rawlings factor at that time, we managed to get that we could still come to Africa and work. And because of the role of the multinational, Ashanti, I'll use Ashanti as the multinational here. Because of the role of Ashanti, we did have IFC really affirming its grip in Africa, because IFC was prepared to work with Ashanti and they liked the management of Ashanti at that time, so it was a good thing for us. In doing all these things, we realized that the local economy then changed. More people were prepared to do business with Ashanti. More people were looking at things that were happening in Ashanti, and we started making all the noise around the globe. But to do this, we realized that government had to also come in to see things that they had to do to create that enabling environment for us to work. So the role of government, which is basically to ensure that everything that the investor needed was available. Government made sure that we changed the various laws, which was, we enacted the BNDC law 153 in 1986. In the same 1986, in order for the multinational to participate in the economy, we established the Minerals Commission. And we realized that in the same era, in the 1987, we had the Minerals Rights or Royalties Regulation. What you see from this is that the multinational was so strong and so influential that it was basically dictating the policies of the state. So these are some of the things that we have to look at when multinationals are coming in. It was dictating the policy of the state. Because of that, the multinational was able to bring in other people in So government then had to sit up and see things that they had to do in order not to compromise the performance of governance. There is another way that people argue that when you give the multinationals too much liberty, you sacrifice national economy. So basically, or national interest. So basically, what we had to do was to go back to the table as government to see some of the things that we have to do in order not to compromise the Ghanaian employment. For instance, when we did this, we had more people coming in as trainers. If you are bringing in about 19 jumbos at that time, we had to bring in master trainers. Where were they coming from? The master trainers were all coming from Australia. And for each jumbo, we had a master trainer. For each scoop tram, we had, for every 5 scoop trams, we had a master trainer. And if you are bringing in such change in technology, then you need to look at the maintenance. So for each 1.85 equipment, we had 1 expert to come and train. I'm using the ratios because the ratios were things I used to work out the numbers. For each 1.85 sheet of equipment, you needed to bring in 1 expert. So you can imagine the number of experts that were coming in, and what was that going to do to our Ghananization? Because in the law 153 said you must use as much as possible Ghanaian employees. It said also that as much as possible you must purchase from Ghana, but there was nothing in Ghana to purchase from anyway. And government had to then also set up a role in order to check our various multinational companies. In that same period, when we changed things, one of the things that happened was Ghana also brought in, because the laws then allowed other companies to come in. And so Ghana changed, the state gold mines were all divested. And we only have 10% in the state gold mines now, mining companies. So you would then realize that we didn't have more authority on the mining industry anymore. It was basically an expert area. But one of the things that we have to look at, as I was talking, is because these things were happening, governments then had to come back and look at the role that the various had to mitigate some of the negatives of multinationals. And this was to look at, for instance, how were we going to have competition from the local companies? If multinationals were bringing in that much money, you could understand what they would do. They would take almost all the good people from other companies. So other companies would not have the manpower to really run. Although they brought in a lot of money in the beginning, they also went in for lucrative stability agreements, like as we have now with other companies, not to mention names. So because they had those stability agreements and the repatriation agreements that they had, almost 85% of the money that they generated at that time was sent back overseas. So over a period, all the money that was generated or was brought in was sent back. So how much money was staying in our economy? Just 15% or something lower. Because of the 15%, we still had to do other purchases. So basically, we're not doing much. But we are paying royalties, yes? You pay the royalties. But because of the capital tax system, we're always writing our capital against our tax. So over 5 years or 10 years, we will not pay tax. So the government was basically not benefiting much from these investments. Those are some of the things, the highlights that will come out from multinationals when they come into the state. Again, we expect that when multinationals come, you would have technology transfer. Yes, with Ashanti, with new equipment, with new consultants coming in, we had the advantage of learning from them. That was what built us. But at the end of the day, There was no R&D done here. Most of the things that were happening, it was at the whims and caprice of the expert to say, I want to train you, I will not train you, no matter what you did. If you like the shape of your nose, he will maybe train you. If he doesn't like the shape of your nose, he says, I'm sorry, you cannot do the job. And in no time, you are changed. So these were major issues that were disturbing us. The government then went in and obviously tried to put in the local content bill to try to address most of these issues that would control multinationals from taking advantage of us. Again, when it came to the government also enacted the CSR projects, initiatives. EITI was also put in place. And because of all these things, there was sort of pressure to bear, the board pressure to bear on multinationals to try and make sure some of their money stayed in the state. To date, I believe that I was reading from the Chamber of Mines bulletin that about 83% of what was supposed to go out was returned into the economy, which is very, very promising and very good news to hear. Just because government had played its role by putting in place the right regulations and laws in order to retain these monies. And also the area of driving out competition, they also looked at that and put in the local content bill. And this has also helped the emergence of small scale companies, not miners, companies. And all these things are roles that the government will have to play in order to to control multinationals. But are we saying the multinationals are that bad? No, they aren't. They are in to make profit. So if you do not put your house in order, they will make the profit. We are businessmen. We will not reasonably or knowingly take undue advantage. We will not knowingly take undue advantage. But you have to put the systems in place so that we do not take advantage. So in order to harness this sort of relationship, I have looked at a model that I used when I was group manager for strategic planning in Ashanti. This was when we had to go out and try to acquire properties in Guinea, Congo, Burkina. Basically in West Africa, we are acquiring properties all over West Africa. What we did was, we wanted to first identify the need. Was there a need for us to do it? Did the country need us? Yes. So then you realize, you find our chief executive meeting with presidents of other countries because there was a need. That's why when investors come to Ghana, they meet with our president, because to establish that there is a need. And there was the right commodity to rally about or around, which was oil, gold, lithium, or what have you. And then there was an action aid research that was made. Although governments have run quickly to give lucrative stability agreements, lucrative stability agreements are not the main areas that attract multinationals. Multinationals are attracted by social infrastructure and data availability for planning. When they come, there's power, there's skill pool, the roads are good, the ports are good, delivery from the port is very fast. Those are the things that we are looking at when we go to a place to try to assess or do a due diligence on the country. And then we have to look at the management profile of the country. One of the things that Bo did was, there's always a risk profile that we look at. How you manage the risk profile was very important to us if you wanted to come into a country. And these things will have to be managed properly, otherwise we will be unable to maintain or harness the contributions of multinationals. Do you have a stable political system? Is the rule of law working? Yes. Ghana has it. So it's attracting more people. Do you have a speedy and efficient judicial system? Yes. If it isn't, then they start asking questions. How am I certain that when I have a problem in Ghana, my capital is not locked up in Ghana? These are models that you look at. And security. Interestingly, when Bo was speaking and he did a job on security, safety in countries, he said this must be safe country, not safe in country. He said he showed you the de-risk. What he has done with the de-risk is he's collected all the information and he applied geological software to it. So he's just changed the game with that, and that is how we manage our security also here. We are asking what is the integrity of policing in the country? Are we sure we are going to be safe? If the integrity of policemen is just to take bribe, then we are sorry, we cannot invest here. Again, illegal mining. One of the things that we did in Guinea was we went into an area at Sigiri where illegal mining was the way, they call that Upaye. That was what we were doing. And we wanted to establish at Sigiri. We had to sit down and then have an agreement with the illegal miners and give them a portion. This is your part, don't cross this line, we also don't cross your line. Before we could work there. And the Ashanti case will tell you that Ashanti basically suspended or closed down because of illegal mining incidents. So all these things are very important for us to look at. And then we are talking again about data. When it comes to the country where we do not have data to collect and put anything in place, it becomes difficult for us. So we look at all these things before we come into an area. For us to maintain multinationals, we need to look at manage our risk profile. And then we come to the policy framework, because when we are negotiating, we look at all these things before we come to the policy framework to draw up the relationship. When these things are absent, we make sure we get it in the framework to make it present. If they are available, then we do not look at it at all. And then when all that is done, we then make an investment decision. So for me, I'll say multinationals are a necessary evil. They are a necessary evil. We cannot wish them away. It behoves on us as a country or government to play a major role in determining the direction of the economy by creating a candid mechanism of controlling the liberalization and free trade of multinationals. It is therefore necessary in dealing with them that the governments position themselves in a position of strength, because normally when you go out, most governments think they are weak and they need them and therefore give out anything. But we must position ourselves in a position of strength, or so that we can negotiate properly when we are dealing with multinationals. Multinationals are very healthy partners and they bridge the gap. They bridge so many gaps. The revenue gap, as earlier speakers have said. They bridge the technology gap for us. They bring us the employment gap. They bridge all these. There are so many positives as I've showed earlier on. But governments will have to sit up and bring up candid, fair policies that will not change over time. Because if you bring in today, make a policy, and tomorrow you change, the next day you change, as it was happening in South Africa a few years ago. The capital will leave the country. There will be capital flight. So the only way we can harness them is to make sure that we are fair We have the people trained in the country, and then we are willing to work with them. I will not want the situation where we say we don't need experts. We need experts, because this is an international company. When you are dealing with experts, we're dealing with the industry. And the people who invest in the industry are not only Ghanaians. They are people on the stock exchange. So my experience in Ashanti was that at times they pick the management profile and say, too many blacks, I will not buy. No white, I will not buy. So on one of those occasions, the then chief executive, Dr. Samjona, went out and employed one of the known American chief executives as Trevor Shoes, and brought him on board. When he brought him on board, we had about 30% of our shares subscribed. It tells you that experts are necessary, but let us get the right experts. Let the policy makers make sure that they get the right people to come in to assist. And again, as Ghanaians, we are even now becoming experts. We are learning and running away. So if we continue running away, they must understand that we're going to have others also coming to take our place. Let us welcome multinationals, but let us as government do our job well. We need honest Ghanaian officials to do the job.